Hi, this is Shmitty and from Concentrate Fire, and then this is my guest today.
Yeah, I'm Karneck. I started a new web series, Star Wars Armada Explained.
Yep, and we are sort of local to each other, not exactly, but we happen to both, he was in town for a tournament, so we thought we would play a game and record it, and then really more than recording the game, we wanted to talk about it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to kind of walk through the turns of the game. But what we played today was he is playing Two Ship, which why don't you describe a little bit what Two Ship's all about?
So Two Ship, for anyone who's been around the Star Wars Armada meta for some period of time, it's essentially you have two ships for the Empire. You have usually the standard plays an ISD-2 and a Quasar Fire 1. The ISD-2 has Price on it, Avenger, and then a standard kit of ECM leading shots, and the Quasar Fire is a Squall with boosted comms, Brunson, and then flight controllers. And then for Two Ship, it all depends on play style, but usually Price is on the ISD, sometimes it's on the Quasar Fire, but the whole mechanic of it is you're abusing Price's ability, which allows you to go last on one turn. You have typically 8 squadrons or 7 squadrons, depending on your loadout, and you're trying to bring something like Jendon, Merrick Steel, sometimes Mork or some other form of bomber. And the whole point is that you wait your Star Destroyer in a position to where you send out your fighters to bomb, ships come to you, your ISD activates. Typically, sometimes you'll have first, so then you do the last, you smack things, then you're first, next round you smack, blow whatever's in your face out of the way, and then you sail on by.
Yeah, it's really, this is a fleet archetype's doing really well in the current regional season.
Unprecedentedly so.
Yeah, and it's its own thing, but it's really, in my mind, an evolution of fleets that have been popular in Armada since the Gen Con special back in the day.
Yeah.
Where it's all about, I'm going to do the last first thing. Where Price makes it different than, triple tapping Demolisher or doing Mothma MC-30s is that you're really taking that ISD and a whole bunch of squadrons, and you've upped the power of that last first activation.
You are maximizing every single point you can squeeze out of 400 points. You're not wasting activations on flotillas and points there.
And instead of it being a small ship you're double, doing the last first shenanigans with, now it's a large ship and, 70 points with the squadrons that it's activating along with it that's going twice. So it ends up being more than half a person's fleet that's doing the last first. So if you watched my video series, I did have one in there on activation advantage and some of the things to do that. This takes a lot of that and just it amplifies it. So what you do to counter it, a lot of the things are the same, but it's a much larger hammer that's swinging at you. And so that's where it's coming from. So it's there and it's a piece, and so anything that's worked in the past still works as a counter to it, but it's harder because it is it's more flexible. Generally speaking, those were going for double arcs and trying to hit one thing.
And the biggest thing that ties it all together is Thrawn.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. I missed that point. Thrawn with double dial. So Thrawn, where is essentially most of the action happening is usually turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. But on turn 1, with Thrawn being able to throw out, if needed, Squadron and a Navigate, which are the two most powerful commands, arguably, in the initial turn 1, turn 2 phase, depending on your fleet build. So with Thrawn being able to throw both of those, and also just as slicer insurance, you can't slicer them. Yeah. Thrawn will always guarantee your squads are getting off. Yeah. So that's kind of...
I also think one of the other things I've seen is the gunnery team on the ISD-2, because previous things that really went for the last first were all about assassinating one thing. This is able, between the squadrons and the gunnery teamed ISD-2, it can engage 3 targets pretty easily and lay a lot of hurt, which makes it much more effective against swarms than those style of lists were in the past.
Yeah.
In that counter. So it makes it much harder to lay traps against and do some of those other things. So we decided, so we'd been talking about this some, and we decided, okay, well, let's go ahead and record a game. Karneck's been playing the Two Ship quite a bit, and I'm like, well, I've got a few different fleets I would throw at it, and, there are some natural counters to Price specifically. One is the, Bail Organa, who came out at the same time, where you can at least keep it from going last first and interrupting that flow. Radis, because it's never quite sure where to point the hammer, because you never know where the fleet's going to be. So you have some of those things that sort of interrupt that. I went with a different fleet that I brought. I brought out my Sato Hammerhead fleet, which really wasn't designed to... What's that?
Is it scary?
Yeah. It's a fleet that's very, very good against certain matchups and very, very bad in others.
Yeah.
It excels at killing ISDs, though.
Yes.
And I actually built the fleet initially because I was really enamored with Task Force Antilles and the ability to kind of spread damage around, which is always great, just to make more attacks futile. And then the way that combined with shields to maximum, because then you're maximizing shields to maximum. I've had games where I've recovered like 25 shields over the course of the game.
Ridiculous.
That thing. Yeah, it's
Ridiculous.
fantastic. And so against something like 2-ship, those hammerheads can just tank the squads all day long. And then, so I built the fleet to that, and I'm like, okay, then Sato provides the firepower to come back, and you end up with these hammerheads chucking ACMs, and, you know, theoretically, I've melted, you know, I've had 3 of those hammerheads melt an ISD in a single round. It's pretty scary. So it was like, okay, this seems like a good max-up. Now, I don't have any of the activation gimmicks except for one, which is another thing you can use to break up 2-ship, which is rogues. Rogues really dropped out of style when Flotillas came out, but the timing on them is so good because you can interrupt the last first and the double activation of those squadrons. You can move around and counter, and maybe if you're lucky, kill some of them, and just make that double active, you know, that the back-to-back activations. You get to interrupt them, and so I've got Han and then Hera making Tycho and Shara 2 rogues, and it was like, it gives me a lot more flexibility in how to respond than a standard squadron outfit where you're just sort of sitting there limp while they, you know, activate their squadrons twice and doing what they will. So
yeah, part of why the rogues are good, or at least like with Hera, the ability to give rogue, is because 2-ship relies, you have to activate all your squadrons. If you're not activating your squadrons, you're not getting your maximum output, which means since all my squadrons are not activated and typically, you know, either kind of semi-spread out or they're clumped up, you now can follow up with rogues to split to where my intel can't, you can only free one target another. I can't free half my squad ball.
yeah. All right, so we're going to go ahead and play through the game, and we're just going to play through the different phases. What we're actually going to do is, for the recording of the game, I'm going to play through the different phases at like double speed or something, because we weren't really talking about them, because the camera was in a nice spot to record the table but not pick up what we say, and then we'll come back through and talk about what we did. So that's kind of an introduction to the fleets. I'll see if I can't post the fleet list up as well where you can see them, but yeah, so that's sort of the intro.
Yep, and I just want to give a shout out. I didn't come up with 2-ship. The guy who came up, that was initially, from my belief, was Boba Fett, and he started playing that against me like 8 or 9 months ago is when he started developing this, and then that's kind of where the list came from, the history.
Right, there you go. Good call. All right, so there we go.
Perfect.
So now that we're ready to get started, for my fleet, I had for objectives opening salvo, which is hilarious with Sato hammerheads. Don't ever pick it. I had contested outpost, and that's really all about me forcing the action where I want it to be. So I can pick where the spot's going to be. Hammerheads like to just sort of point at their target and shoot it, so it helps for setting up a kill box. And then the last one's Solar Corona, which again, all about out deploying your opponent and kind of you get to decide where the fight's going to be. So Karneck here decided to go first and chose...
So I chose contested outpost. Picking opening salvo against Sato's hammer, that's just not a good idea. Don't ever pick that against Sato's hammerheads. You will instantly regret it.
Yeah.
Another viable choice could have been Solar Corona. Why is that? Because then all I have to do is just deploy in the middle, and then that's where I'll be. And so it forces you to then decide how to react to that. The thing is that with this many hammerheads and this many activations, he could essentially still keep me forked, and I wouldn't gain any benefit from that. And there is a time where that selection would be good, is if your opponent can't force a double fork on you like that. But in this situation, he can. Mm-hmm. So I went with contested outpost because then if he's wanting to get points from it, I still have a relative idea of where his fleet is going to be once he puts it down. Because he still wants to claim points from it, and I, as a first player, still need to try to see if I can prevent him from getting points or claim points from it later in the game.
Yeah. And so it works out, I have, with my fleet, 7 deployments to his 6. So we'd think, oh, he's going first, I've got him out deployed. Well, not exactly, because he can drop the Quasar and then get 4 squadrons out. And I can't delay enough to really do that. So when I start deploying, I'm like, okay, I'm going to deploy in a way where I can kind of give him an optimal choice so I know where he's going to be. I've only get a couple kind of reaction deployments later to drop a couple hammerheads in the right spot. And so I tried, we ended up playing off to the right, well, my right on the table, just to, again, kind of, I was able to set up where, okay, I think I know where he's going to have to come, and try to figure out, okay, where's my kill box essentially going to be? Now that, at that point, you're left with the decision of when do you price.
Right. So, as you see in the deployment, I try to give myself enough room off to where I could have deployed my ISD either far left or far right, depending on his deployment. And because you never want to commit to being just right in front of the station with Squall, because you're giving away too much information. So I put it on the right, and I priced turn 2, and that's 90% of players going to price turn 2 because that is usually the maximum benefit of what you can leverage from price. I knew he was too smart to him not allow me to price on turn 1 and smack some hammerheads. It wouldn't be very efficient for me to do that. So by pricing on turn 2, my goal was I could rush my ISD up to potentially, hopefully, stay out of long range, and then he still has to come into me. I may not get the medium range shots that I would prefer, but I'll at least definitely get some red range shots.
Yeah, and when I see price turn 2, I'm like, okay, if he price turns 3, I'm rushing him.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna go
do that,
and I'm gonna blow him up turn 3 before he gets the chance to even
Absolutely.
activate. So when he's pricing turn 2, then I have to think, okay, where do I want to be relative to him at turn 2? And so I, have to start looking like, okay, where do I think he's going to be, and how do I deploy myself to where he's going to get to go last at turn 2, first at turn 3. So I need to make sure that at the end of turn 2, he's not getting somewhere that's super advantageous against me. At that point, I kind of have to select one of my hammerheads to be tribute, and which I think in this case ended up being hammerhead number 9. Yeah, no, it wasn't going to go well for that poor hammerhead.
Poor hammerhead.
No, but
it never goes well for the tribute hammerhead.
No, and it had to. So from there, we moved on to turn we moved into turn 1. A lot of this was, again, looking at... I think we're both trying to figure out where is the fight really going to happen turn 2 and 3, and getting ourselves in position for that. I kept my squadrons behind my hammerheads. I have 8 squadrons, and it's 80 points, and they're good squads, but I can't take 8 squadron attacks against them. So if he was going to jump me with Mythal or Saber or whoever, I needed to make sure that happened in my hammerhead flak bubble. Hammerheads are great at flakking. So I actually moved my squadrons behind my fleet. It's one of those cases where hammerheads are... You would rather the squadrons attack the hammerheads than my fleet. That's what the hammerheads want to do. Please, squadrons, come attack me. They're best off there. So, a lot of people will take your squads and put them out in front of your fleet to try to screen your ships. In this case, the squads are worth more than the ships, so I was screening the squads with my ships over the first turn. But that was about it. Most of it was just sort of getting ready for the turn 2 action.
And even if you had done that, I have Dedgar, I would just go and tell them and still bomb your ships anyway.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all that happened. So So, turn 2, now, this is an interesting turn. So the Quasar has to go first.
Quasar has to go first.
Then
Price is on the ISD.
Then I get my whole fleet, and then the ISD goes. I did decide to interrupt that. He had actually, at the end of turn 2, you did move Morna up at the end of turn 2 and attack to Hammerhead.
Yeah, so at the end of turn 1, you mean?
At the end of turn 1, sorry.
Yeah,
yes.
so very tail end of turn 1, I saw that I had the ability to move Mora up to peg a Hammerhead, and with 2 ship, you can't pass up free damage when it's presented to you. Yeah. You need everything you can to squeeze out. So I moved her up. I threw 2 damage.
2 damage, yeah, which I pulled one off with
Antilles, yeah.
And that worked fine. So at the top of turn 2, I was like, well, I've got a free shot at Morna with Han before he shoots and pulls away. So I bumped Han over there, dropped a couple damage on.
Yeah,
a couple damage on her.
The point really wasn't so much to hit her, is to I have to now commit Dengar before I wanted to.
Yeah, and the damage doesn't hurt. It moved it up there, but it was probably. And the other piece was, it put Han. I had Han like in 4 flak bubbles where I had him parked. So if he was going to come up and attack Han, he was going to have to.
Absolutely eat some flak.
Eat some flak, which is something I wanted to do at that point. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the first things happened to. Then the Quasar came and I think you started moving your squadrons up.
Yeah, the first squadron I tossed up was Black Squadron, just because he's escort. I need, for me, losing Black Squadron to a flak bubble, not a problem. I wanted him to get 4 blue die alpha because he has no swarm. I wanted something in on Han to the best of ability, which he actually rolled, 2 damage.
Yeah.
So, not the best, but anything you can get. And then I committed Dengar up. And then I had the decision, do I commit my bombers now? Do I leave Mora there and just commit more fighters killing Han? Or do I get her out? I decided the best play would be to put Dengar up there, throw some more damage on Han, and then have MK pull out. So she's not getting flak to death, because I don't... Typically, your main squad, like Moraki and Steel, you don't want to take unnecessary damage if you can help it.
And this was the start of some of his hot rolling, because...
Yeah, then she rolled 3 damage, and then... Yeah, she rolled 3 damage on that attack.
She rolled 3 damage off the attack from Jendon.
Yeah.
And then rolled 3 damage again.
Jendon to 3, and then she did her turn, and then she did another 3. I didn't even have to do any rerolls, though.
No. And that...
6 damage.
Hammerheads can tank, but that was a bit much. But, it was okay.
Yeah. And pulled him out, and the Quasar then, I slowed him down. I typically, on turn 2 like that, you want to speed your Quasar up to speed 3 to then get off to the side and behind all the enemy ships, so it can no longer be a viable target to get shot. But I couldn't quite make that happen. It would have ended up in front of my ISD, and it absolutely would have just been boat murdered. Yeah. That's not what I want. So I slowed it down and tried to pull it as far away as I could and give it other viable targets for him.
So now I've got all 5 of my ships to activate, and this was where I had to really think. Now, my original plan was to take one of my Hammerheads, and the one that I thought I wanted to be tribute. Unfortunately, this is the one that Morna had proceeded to drop 8 damage on. So that was the one that I planned on moving up there. So I looked around and said, okay, do I have any other alternates? Well, 2 of mine were over off on a flank. They couldn't really get in position, because what I wanted to do was move a Hammerhead up into just out of medium range of his ISD. The reason being is, theoretically, that Hammerhead can survive the long-range shot, and then it forces him to ram me. And I want him to ram me there, because what I want is him to not get close to the rest of my Hammerheads, so he gets good shots at the top of turn 3. So it's really, I'm just using him as a blocker. Now, if you're playing not my fleet, just about, there's quite a few different ships you could throw up into that blocker role. A pair of flotillas is also probably going to do the job if you can put them
long
there.
Range?
Yeah. And the idea just being, I'm not going to let you get into optimum range of the rest of my fleet. So I looked at that and I considered one of the others, but the problem was, even though the one that I was planning to use on tribute, I didn't want to use because it was damaged, it couldn't not be there. So even if I moved another one into that spot, it was still going to end up in a bad spot. So it's like, well, it's just going to have to be the tribute. So I moved it up there, and I established a nice, I had it in the lead, I had a nice kill box there where it's like, okay, here you got to come at me. So we go to Avengers activation.
Yeah, so he chooses to throw some, he pretty much only could throw flak. So he did some flacking and killed and hurt some squads, but nothing that really contribute
nothing
to harming me yet.
Yeah.
So He keeps all of his hammerheads essentially either at long range, or for me not really being able to shoot effectively, except for the one hammerhead that was here did meander into long range.
Yeah.
But this one obviously he kept out of medium, and he had it long.
Yeah.
I activated essentially what was just left of my anti-squadron ball. I had Merrick Steel. I threw him in there just to pop some additional damage on the one hammerhead, just to ensure a potential kill. Which I didn't think that, I felt like my die were not going to be enough to kill it, but I wanted to at least soften up that it would ensure kill on the top next round. Well, I threw the die that I needed. I rolled an accuracy, a blank, a double hit, and a hit. I managed to accuracy his evade, and then Avenger his redirect, because I think he still had one shield left, I think.
No, I didn't have any shields left.
It had enough damage to where it only had the 3 health left, and I managed to kill it because of that. All because of one accuracy and rolling a double.
Yeah, well, you got it still did its job of blocking, because you did 1 health, but what it didn't do was survive the turn. Like it,
Oh right, yeah. It was left on 1 health.
It was left on 1 health after the shot.
Yep.
So it managed to do the block, which was great because it did put the ISD where I wanted it.
Yes.
The problem was because he rolled well, it didn't survive the turn, which would have been really my ideal, would be for it to survive the turn, because then he's got to commit a significant, basically
at least one more squad, at least a squadron.
Well, a squad wouldn't have pulled it because TFA would have kept it. So if
it was, I would have threw MK at it.
Yeah.
So I would have had to dedicate one of my main straight bombers to ensure that I didn't have to waste a shot on it.
But he had a nice shot there. Generally speaking, it should have been safe at long range.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't.
That's our motto.
Absolutely. But it was, again, it was expected to die. It did its job of blocking him from really getting right up where he could wreck the rest of my fleet. So that was good. And then I moved my rogues in, but he'd done a really nice job of not giving me any obvious targets, except for one. I really wanted to kill Dengar. So I started by hopping Hera with Hera had grit, hopped over Mauler, and then whiffed the shot at Dengar. Yeah. Now Dengar had already taken 1 damage and spent his scatter on something else.
He had an exhausted scatter, and he was down to 3 health.
And so I was like, okay, if I can get in there and get Hera to do something, then Tycho and Shara can come in and finish the job. Yeah. Well, she whiffed, and I'm like, well, now Tycho and Shara can't come finish the job. So they went off and I think actually just bombed your ISD.
Shara went and shot.
And whiffed.
And Tycho went and did a damage on my ISD.
Yeah. And so that was unfortunate, because it would have been nice to have gotten rid of Dengar just to reduce your mobility.
Absolutely.
So that was unfortunate. So then we move, and that was turn 2. So it was I don't know, it was probably a better turn for you overall, just because you did kill the Hammerhead, but I was expecting that Hammerhead to die. It did its job of blocking.
And then the second shot too, that shot from Avenger on the other Hammerhead, it still put, I think, like 2 damage in on it, right?
It got 1 through because I TFA'd 1
Right,
off.
you moved 1 to another one.
Yeah.
But even if that doesn't seem significant, like against TFA, even when he's spreading the damage around, it's still future damage that he can no longer not spread around.
It adds up, for sure. But that set us up for basically the game, which when he uses Price on turn 2, it turns turn 3 into the game. So this point, no, we don't have the Quasar or the Pelta here, but honestly, those aren't what really matters. I set up more or less what I wanted, and I traded one of my pieces to get his into the spot that I wanted
Absolutely.
him. This Hammerhead's in a bad spot where he's probably going to die, but I've got good shots on other things. So, you made an interesting choice, and I wasn't sure why you did this. You actually activated your Quasar first and sent squads at this guy. Why did you choose that over just plowing him?
Because as first player, I knew that I'm going to get 2 activations to your 1 in what matters.
Right.
So a lot of people would just be like, oh, I should activate my ISD to get my maximum effectiveness. Well, his other ships over here were not at medium range. So even if I had activated my Star Destroyer first, yes, I would have plowed this and potentially got a long range shot over there. But then I'm moving into close range of potential 2 double arcs. Not where you want your ISD to be. And then the Pelta was right here.
Yeah.
Not what you want. So my intention was, I know my ISD is going to get shot by that guy anyway, because if you don't activate him, you're going to lose that activation.
Yeah.
There is no point to move my ISD yet, because if I could potentially kill the Hammerhead on squads alone here, then I force him to move something into medium range, which is more beneficial to me.
Absolutely.
So with the squads, and I didn't realize, and this is why you always check everything before you start committing, I had a medium range shot on my Quasar Fire to the Hammerhead. I thought it was at long range. So when I started committing squadrons, I had committed 2, and then realized that I wasn't getting potentially the damage that I needed to kill the Hammerhead, because he was spreading the damage around.
Morna finally whiffed, basically.
She finally whiffed. She only did 1 damage on 1 attack, and then 2 on another.
Yeah, and that wasn't going to be enough.
That wasn't going to be enough.
No, and he realized he wasn't going to kill it with the squads, forgot the Quasar was there, and even if he'd gone with the Quasar and the other 2 squads, it would have been close.
It would have been too close for comfort in terms of getting things averaged out. So then I switched gears. I analyzed who is the most potential threat to me after I'm done activating, and that's Hera.
Yeah.
So then I threw my remaining 2 activations at Hera and managed to murder her with really good die rolls.
Which was great for him, and I was like, oh, that hurts, but to me, I was more like, hey, I've got my close range shot, I've got a con fire, I had a side arc shot at his Quasar, I threw it, he Brunsoned. I considered using my con fire die, it didn't seem to make any sense, so I throw my 4 black dice at the ISD, and I whiffed. I got 0 hits.
You got,
on 4 dice. I used
Ordnance Experts.
Ordnance Experts, and ended up with 2 total damage.
2 regular hits.
Yeah. So, now, for those of you who don't keep up with the statistics on Armada, an average roll there would be 5 and triggering ACMs to make it 7. I did 2. Not ideal. Then I moved up, and that was fine. So he activates his ISD, and actually came up just short of killing it. After you move some squadrons around and were able
this guy I threw some squadrons at him.
Threw some squadrons at one of these 2 over here.
Yeah.
Which worked out pretty well. You did a little bit of damage. And
because I knew I could at his health pool, he was at 6 effective health left, and I essentially do 8 effective damage.
Yeah.
I knew I didn't need to commit any squadrons to him.
And you rolled 5, but then leading shots got it.
Yeah.
So he went away, but then we had another, again, this
situation.
Should take this shot at long range and be okay. I had 4 health left, and he rolled an accuracy, a double, a hit, and a crit.
Yeah.
Just enough, again, and I had 5 health left, because he rolled that, I had 5 health left, he did that, and he was just enough range to get over and ram me for the kill on him.
Drop him to 1 effective health, and then, I just moved up, rammed him at speed 3, and then plopped myself back.
Yeah. So, this is not good, because now I've lost another shot. I say, okay, well, let's try this Hammerhead, another close range shot, another 4 black dice. Throw the dice out there, 4 single hits. I'm like, well, I got to get that ACM shot, re-roll them, and now I have 3 single hits. Again, on anything approaching statistically average, I put a hurting on that ISD. So I fly past, take the Pelta, it shoots its shot. It, of course, rolls 4 double marks, which he easily, at that point, takes on his shields after he braces. And we more or less called the game there. The thing is, I wouldn't have played anything differently.
No.
And I had that ISD more or less where I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
Had I rolled statistically average, I dropped the ISD that turn.
Yes.
And if this one doesn't die. Now, so he rolled a little hot where he needed to. I roll a little poorly. If we all roll average, the ISD doesn't get out of that turn.
If it does somehow manage to, it's at like 1-2 health, enough that Hera, if I hadn't killed Hera and 2 rogues chasing it down, absolutely would have murdered it.
Yep. And I mean, I would have had to do some ramming and things like that and whatever else. But so it was one of those where we both looked at it. We felt like, I played it right.
Yeah.
It was all set up the right way. And then there's dice.
That's Armada, baby.
Yeah. So again, it's you have that. There was the last first, the double activation.
All powerful, but in this situation, that kill box, as a 2-ship player and somebody who's played 2-ship to 2 regionals and to a very big tournament, that kill box was perfect. But as a 2-ship player, I couldn't have played it any other way. I had, in order to get points, I need to score big, because with 2-ship, it's score big or go home.
Yeah.